Welcome to this lovely practice for exploring the back of the body, the spine. We're going to be working a bit more therapeutically, so looking at sensations that are arising as we move softly and gently through the body. Our mantra or our motto today is less is more, and also small movements govern big ones. So take it easy today. Think about how we can become a little bit more subtle and soft with our movements. You don't need any props unless you want something for underneath the knees and maybe something warm for Shavasana at the end. We'll begin the session standing on our feet, so I will meet you there in just a moment. So find your way up to your feet, and you can allow your feet to, spread out a little bit. Your legs to be a little bit wider than the hips if you need to. And just find a comfortable position to stand. We can get really strict with alignment in yoga, but also in physio and all these sorts of areas where we focus on the body, about trying to keep the pelvis perfectly in line, the head perfectly stacked over the shoulders perfectly stacked over the hips, etc. But we're all human and we all do different things all day. If we start kind of getting pushed into this, like what we think of as a perfect alignment, and then we're like walking around like, I have to be in this perfect alignment, it doesn't really work, because we then go back into our natural postural habits, and the spine is designed to kind of move and meander. It's not designed to be just like this rigid thing that is perfectly aligned all of the time. So we're going to work with the spine, allow it to kind of have a bit of freedom to move. And what I want you to consider today as your motto, or as your kind of mantra, if you like, is less is more, and small movements govern big ones. So it's not about taking big back bends, deep forward folds. It's not about making this a huge, intense practice, but about allowing the subtleties of this practice to enable the bigger movements that you might do in your day-to-day life. So let your body find its comfortable, natural standing position. And obviously, we're not going to really want to stand like this or like this. But none of us really stand like this anyway, do we? Let's be honest. Unless you do know that posture is a big thing for you and you do need to kind of check in and have a little feel and go, okay, is everything all right? Or if you're struggling with pain in your body, that's a different thing. Most of us find that we can actually ground the feet, lengthen through the spine, relax the shoulders, the jaw, and start to welcome in the breath quite normally, naturally, rhythmically. I'm going to just have a little play with moving the hips around in little circles. I'm going to make it bigger so you can see it to begin with. And then I'm going to make it smaller and make it a little bit more rhythmic. You know, like the hulas, the hula hoop things that you have when you're a kid. Like one of those, and you kind of go big, I want you to go really small. You know, once you get it going, you're like, la, 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 la. And then you might want to go the other way. Let the knees be natural. Try not to overthink it, and just see if you can kind of add a little bit of a rhythm into the pelvic area to release some tension in the spine, the hips, the knees, the ankles, and feel that ripple effect, that spiral effect going up towards the crown of the head. The head will just kind of move. Change direction when you want to. It's quite fun when you allow yourself to go through this little rhythm. It's quite fun. Should be quite fun. But then maybe I would say that about most things that are movement based. I mean, I love cycling and running, and people are like, really? I mean, I never used to like running, tell you that. But I learnt to really enjoy it. Good, couple more. Small movements govern big ones. Keep reminding yourself that. It doesn't have to be a big session, a big movement to be beneficial. And then coming back to the center, we're going to do little side stretches. Small, maybe fast. And if you're like, I'm tired today, just do little and slow, or little and quick. And I keep the knees a little bit bent and just bopping from side to side. The arms just kind of dangle, so we don't really need to do much with the arms. We're allowing a little bit of side bending in the spine. Now your lumbar spine loves forward folding and back bending, so extension and flexion. So by releasing into side stretches, and also we're going to do twists a little bit into the lower back, we're going to help that forward folding and side bending action. Good, then we're going to come into the twist. So we're just doing little twists, small. Let the arms again be floppy, and we can just go kind of quickly with this. And just little side to sides. Let the arms just kind of follow. And we're thinking here about moving from the pelvis, not the thoracic spine, which we usually kind of think of twisting from up here. I kind of want you to think about it being lower to release the lower back. If this agitates your knees, then obviously take it smaller and you can do little wobbles, kind of like side to side. If it still agitates your knees, you can skip this pose completely. I don't want you to feel pressure and tension in your knees. Or you can equally move your feet as you turn, so to kind of release the pressure in the knees. So just have a play, what works best for your body. Let it be small, so this is not a big movement, it's not a massive, rapidly huge twist. We're going to do a few of those a little bit later on. It's a nice, simple, easy movement. Good, coming back to the center. Now my favorite one we're going to do today, but I say that about every pose, is like a bounce. Now you can pick the heels up and bounce the heels down, which I like, or you can keep the knees bent, the heels grounded, and bounce this way. So you're allowing the bounce to happen from the ground up, but you're not adding the kind of landing of the heels into the floor. The heel bouncing feels really nice for me because I can feel the vibration a little bit deeper going up through to the crown of the head, and this is just releasing tension in your body. So adding the bouncing feels really, really nice to kind of reduce some of that held tension in the physical body, like shimmying it all out. Good, a couple more breaths. Let the breath feel like it can just as it needs to. So we're not holding on to the breath. And then we'll land the heels or stop the bounce and come to a little stillness for a moment. Just check in. How does it feel in your body to stand up nice and tall? How's the back feel? Then we'll inhale, raise the arms up to the sky. And just notice how the spine and the back muscles feel as the arms come up and over the head. What can you notice that's different just from raising your arms up? We're going to take the right hand and wrap it around the left wrist. And a very small upper side stretch, the upper body side stretch, really small. And you can kind of just gently bounce in and out of this. Now, when I mean small, I do mean small. And we're not coming into a big side stretch. It's a very small little bounce in and out. Or if the bouncing doesn't feel good, just stay where it's easy and where it's accessible. You can always add a little bit of rotation, or you can just stay in that little side stretch and breathe. Good, we'll come back to the center, we'll swap hands. The left hand wraps around the right wrist, little side stretch over to the left, and again, either a little bouncing or holding. You may discover as you bounce, you go a little bit deeper, and that's fine, but we're not trying to go in super deep. We're just staying where it feels light and accessible for the body. Good, come back to the center. Little back bend, so you might want to open up the arms and open up the chest. Inhaling. And as we exhale, we'll bend the knees and place the hands towards the thighs. We're going to go through a few cat-cows here. So as we inhale, the tailbone lifts up, the crown of the head raises to the sky. And as we exhale, we tuck the tailbone under, round the spine, pull the navel in a little bit, chin to the chest, and repeat. Inhale, tailbone up, crown of the head high. Exhale, rounding. So this is your extension and now your flexion of the spine. One more. Inhale, tailbone up. Now from here, if you know your back feels a little bit agitated and you want to come into the forward fold from here, keeping the lower back elongated, knees bent, we can fold this way. Or, if you prefer, you can round into cat, straighten the legs, release the arms, and you'll get a bit more of a stretch in that kind of middle back region, and then maybe swing a little bit from side to side. So you can sway in either pose. Just check in with what feels kind of interesting for you. We're not looking for pain in the body. We're looking for kind of interesting, comfortable
Nice sensations that will actually enable kind of more of a reset of the body and the spine rather than agitation. Good. And if you want a bit of both, you can always take the alternative posture. One more breath. As the fingertips come down into the floor, the right leg is going to lunge back and the knee is going to come down into the earth. Low lunge. Find your low lunge that works for your body. It doesn't matter if the left knee goes over the toes. It's kind of designed to do that. So allow it to kind of go where it feels comfortable. But if the knee is feeling a little bit icky, then you may want to shift the foot forward so that the knee is more in line with the ankle. But what we're going to do is play with walking the hands back and walking the hands forward, straightening and bending the left leg. And just have that exploration of the back line of the body, how it affects the back as we shift forward and backwards. What's going on? And we feel into the sensations that are being experienced in the physical body as we move back and forward. Good, now we're going to pause in the stretch, and it doesn't have to be a straight left knee. It can be bent. I want you to start to play with the tailbone, the pelvis, so either tilting back, meaning or tilting forward so the tailbone lifts up, anterior tilt of the pelvis, or tucking under, posterior tilt. And just notice the subtleties as you shift this very small movement. It may be really minuscule depending on how tight the legs are and the back. What happens to the sensation in the body? What can you feel? Just be curious with your body and notice some of these sensations. And then maybe finding a bit more of a place where you feel you can handle the stretch, but we're not too tucked under or too pushed back. And maybe wiggle the hips from side to side. The challenge here is to try and keep the foot still. So try not to let the foot go with you. In fact, sometimes I kind of just hold the foot as a little bit of biofeedback to say, stay there, foot. And then just giving the hip a little bit of a wiggle. Hips, we've got two of them, hopefully. Good. Then we'll re-enter back into that lunge position, nice and slowly. Left forearm's going to come to the left thigh, and we'll take a circle of the right arm up, all the way to the sky. Notice what you feel here. What's the back body doing? We reach back behind us, twisting, maybe letting the gaze go to the right hand, and coming back down, so a little bit of flexion in the spine, and forward. And then you can speed this up or you can stay slow and feel all of the movements happening in the spine, including the shoulder as well and the hip if you'd like. We'll do one more circle if we're going slow with me. We'll just keep going if you're moving faster. And that right hand will then land into the ground underneath the right shoulder, and we'll diagonally reach the left arm forward. Rotation now is going to happen from our thoracic spine, so the upper part of your back. So as we open, the arm is just going to kind of follow that diagonal up to the corner of the back of the room, or the top of the room. And if you notice your arm is kind of swinging backwards and you're feeling it too much in your pectoral muscles, you've kind of gone too far. Because we then rotate back. It should be quite a nice, easy movement. We rotate open, and we rotate back. One more. Rotate open, and rotate back. Placing the left hand to the outside of the left foot, we're coming into a plank variation. Now you can just bring your knees down to the floor, shift your hips slightly forward, and what's important here is we want the sacrum, the scapula and the back of the skull to be relatively in one line, meaning the spine still has its natural curvatures. So if you find this too much on the wrists, you can always drop down to the forearms. If you find this too much just in general in your body, you can just come out, take a breath, and come back in. Or if you want more of a challenge, lift the knees off the floor and hold your plank position, but think about the alignment of the sacrum, shoulder blades, and the skull. And breathe. So you're noticing here that the spine, in order to stay in its neutral plane, all of those wonderful muscles have to activate in order to keep us in this beautiful alignment. One more breath. Now we can drop the knees down to the floor, make our way onto our belly however feels nice for the body, and just take a moment to breathe. Take a break. Allowing the back body to expand every time you inhale. And every time you exhale, it just sinks back, shrinks in. One more breath. So you can stay here if your back feels it doesn't need any more extension, so back bend, because lying on your belly is still a back bend. Or we can come up onto the forearms into Sphinx position. Palms can be anywhere that they feel the most comfortable, so flat, up, together. For some reason I quite like the palms together. I think I like the feeling of my palms pressing towards each other. And then tucking the tailbone slightly away, pulling up through the crown of the head. So we're creating this almost like imagined tube, like a straw that's being pulled long before it then curves into shape. It feels so much better to enable the body to kind of elongate before we then feel that curvature happening. And then here, you might be, that's enough. This is plenty of a back bend. Or start to bend one knee. Notice what happens in the lower back and maybe straightening it away. We can do the same for the other leg, bending the other knee, drawing the heel towards the bum, or the bum towards the heel. And you can stay with that, or maybe both feet come in, pulling both heels towards the glutes. Notice how this changes the back of your body. And see if you can avoid the bum coming up to the sky. Just notice if you can keep just gently pushing the tailbone down towards the knees now. And if you like this, maybe rocking the feet a little bit from left to right without the hip bones leaving the floor too much. And they're going to leave the ground, but we're not rolling all the way over. Yeah, so it's just a nice gentle twist to one direction and then to the other. Good. As you come back to the center, release the legs one at a time or both together. Hands can come underneath the shoulders, and we're going to push up into that tabletop position and then widen the knees if you'd prefer, or bring the knees together for more of a rounded spine into a child pose position. So if you know that your back would like to round, knees together feels good. If you need a bit more space, so say your belly, your boobs, or anything that kind of needs a little bit more space, maybe your lower back wants to lengthen a bit more, let the knees go a bit wider. So accommodate your body the way that you're feeling today, and just checking that you're listening in to the body and not the direction of the pose. The pose isn't really important. What's important is your body. Good. Now, if you would like to, we can tuck the chin as close to the chest as possible. We're going to come into a rabbit pose. Hands might come behind the back, interlacing the fingers. And then we lift the bum up so we roll onto the crown of the head. Now be aware, this is quite a strong neck stretch. So most of the pressure is actually in your legs and not in your head. And you may want to squeeze the shoulder blades together and lift the hands up towards the sky. Quite a deep stretch, the back line of the body. Take another breath. Now if you're in rabbit pose, we're going to bring the hands close towards the head. If you're in tabletop, just come back with the hands forward. And we lift up, pushing into our cow position, arching the back, Lifting up through the crown of the head, and just get a few moments here to breathe. So breathing in the extension of the spine, nice and steadily. Wonderful. Let's feel that back bend, and it doesn't have to be a big movement. Remember, small movements govern big ones. If you want to add a little bit of movement here, add a little bit of movement. If there's something that feels kind of interesting or tight or twitchy, remember your neck is still part of the spine. Now you can come back to a child pose position or stay in tabletop or tuck the toes and come into downward facing dog. Now down dog, the hands can go where they want to. If you want to work less into your arms, walk the hands a little bit closer towards the feet. If you want to work a little bit more into the legs, walk the hands maybe a bit further away as well and begin to straighten the legs. Or if you're finding the hamstrings are very tight, bend the knees. Try to let the head release. You don't really need the head to be kind of up and forward. It's just going to strain the neck. So you can just let the head relax a little bit here and then just play, breathe, explore. If we're in child pose still or tabletop, we're absolutely perfect there. Know that we don't have to come into this pose ever if we don't want to. And then we'll make our way down back into tabletop or in down dog. And step the right leg forward into a nice low lunge. This low lunge, we may decide to lift the arms up to the sky and interlace the last 3 fingers. And just taking very small little circles. Maybe going back the other way, small, small. Good. And we're going to come back to frame the right foot. Tuck the left toes and step the foot of the left to the top of the mat and come into dangle. Curling up vertebrae at a time. Chin tucks in. Legs might want to straighten all the way up to standing. Coming back to that standing position where we feel the spine in its most comfortable standing position, most comfortable Tadasana. And we're going to come back to our little hulas. Hula, hula. We can go both directions. We can have a little play here and just get the rhythm going. So think small. It's not a massive hula hoop, yes? We're not taking huge movements with the hips. It's really tiny, which means your knees are going to be softly bent. And it means that it's kind of rhythmical. So after a while, you kind of just don't even notice you're doing it. You know, sometimes when you kind of sway from side to side or you do like a repetitive movement and you don't even know you're doing it until someone spots you. Oh, you're swaying or you're moving. Oh, I didn't even realise. Let it be like one of those movements. Similarly, we're going to come to our side to side. So really small, little tiny side to side. Remember, we're working lower back rather than upper back for a minute. We're going to come to the upper back in a bit, but for now we're just staying in the lower, side to side, really small movements, really tiny. Good. Then we come to our little twist. And remember, the twist is happening lower. So it's not a big rotation in the thoracic spine, it's small in the lower. So let it be quick and small. My arms are kind of just like flapping around. Again, if your knees hurt, then take a little bit more space or let the feet roll out. Do what you need to do to accommodate your body. So remember, this isn't a big slap and wrap kind of big movement. It's really tiny. It's really a lot smaller than you think. Small. Yeah, nice. And then we're going to come to our little bounces. So we lift the heels, either bounce with the heels, dong, 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 or bounce with the knees. I have to give you sound effects. I'm like, ding, ding, ding. So whatever feels kind of the most, I was going to use the word satisfying, and I guess I kind of mean that. Like, what does it feel like it's releasing the spine? If it's agitating the body, you don't even need to bounce. If you're like, oh, I don't like this, it feels horrible for my body, then you can skip this. But actually, I really love a little bit of bouncing to allow a vibration to move through the body, to start to kind of release or shake up some of the tension, the holding. Good, couple more breaths. And then land the feet. Inhale, we'll slowly lift the arms up, slowly, slowly, so we'll feel the stretching happening as we're raising the arms up. Notice the muscles that contract. Notice the length and the space of the vertebrae. Maybe taking hold of the right wrist with the left hand. We do a little side, small, really small side stretch over to the left side. And you can do little pulses, like bouncing in and out, little tiny pulses. Or you can stay still. You may discover you go a bit deeper as you pulse, but it's not the intention. The intention is just to wake up. Some side stretching in the thoracic spine as well. Let's go to the other side. So we'll come back to the center, inhale, swap the grip and take it to the right. Little pulsing over to the other side. Really small. It's hard for us to do small movements because we're so kind of geared up for doing these massively deep, strong stretches. Okay, coming back to the center, we're going to open up into a little back bend. Arms can go out nice and wide or wherever they need to be. And then as we bend our knees, the hands will come down towards the thighs. Coming through what we kind of think of this as like a rest pose, right? When you've been running, it's like a recovery position because you're stabilizing the accessory muscles for breathing so you can pant. Although it's just a nice position to then access the spine. So we're going to lift the tailbone up into our little cow position. Inhale and exhale, tucking under, rounding into cat. Again, it can be small. It doesn't have to be a huge cat-cow. Inhale, into cow, arching into the back. And then rounding, tucking the tailbone under. Exhale. One more, inhale, lift the tailbone up, arch the spine. Now you can stay here and then fold from the hips, elongating the back, keeping the knees bent. This is better if you're feeling the lower back needs spaciousness here. Or you can come through the cat position, straighten the legs. Now you feel that obviously there's a rounding happening through the spine. And in both poses we might want to sway slightly left to right if that feels good. Just check in with which variation feels the most accessible for your body today and that actually feels nourishing. We don't always have to go, do you know what, the pose that feels like the deepest stretch is the one for me. It might be that you want the littlest sensation in the body, the least sensation, to actually discover that it's right for your body. Good, and we'll bend the knees if the knees are straightened to bring the fingertips down to the floor. The left leg is going to lunge back. Find that lunge that works for your body. And then we can walk the hands backwards, beginning to straighten the right leg. And we walk the hands forward. In and out, or out and in, depending on how you see the pose. Which one feels the most more in and which one might feel the more out. Good, maybe one more time. In and out. Holding the hamstring stretch, so generally speaking it's most comfortable for the hip to be stacked over the knee, but you can always sink back a little bit more if you need that. It would feel a little bit more uncomfortable to have the knee behind the hip though. And then we're going to start to play with the pelvis, so cat-cow again, but thinking more of the anterior-posterior tilt of the pelvis. So if you're like, I can't even lift my pelvis back at all, don't panic. Just see what you can do and how the pelvis may be able to move and how it affects the sensation down the back of the right leg. And just having an explore. Maybe it's the foot that's moving as well, that's really encouraging a little bit of release. And then we're going to wag the tail side to side and stabilizing the right foot, so you can use the hand to keep the foot still, just so that we're not just rolling in and out of the hip, but we're actually feeling the back doing the movement. Good. And then we'll re-bend that right knee, coming into a nice lunge again. Right forearm to the right thigh, big circles of the left arm. They can be slow. Feel your body as you're moving. Rotating round, twisting, back bending, flexing as we come through. Up,
and around. You remember you can speed this up if you want a little bit more speed, or you can slow it down. Last time. As we come back round, this time we're going to bring the left hand to frame the top foot, and then we'll reach the right arm diagonally towards the ground, so it's coming forward diagonally down. The rotation here is rotating up from the thoracic spine, so the upper back. So this side of mine is not as flexible. So my arm isn't going to come all the way back here, because then I'm just getting into the pectoral muscles. And then we rotate back. So it's smaller. Feel the actual rotation happening in the spine, and just go into that rotation. You don't need to go any further than that. One more, rotating. And then framing the right foot with the right hand. Bring our body into that tabletop position, but then knees a bit further back. So as we shift forward, we're into our variation of plank, when we can be hands, wrists, forearms, or full plank. So if you find that full plank, I hate the variation of full plank, I hate that term. Knees up plank is too strong for you, just drop the knees, or you can float between the two. What we want to encourage is sacrum, scapula, and skull in one alignment, which means there will be a natural curvature in your lower back, a natural kyphotic curve in your thoracic spine. So the spine is exactly as it would be, as if it was standing. Maybe if you're lifting the knees off the ground, you're playing with, again, where you need to be in terms of relation to over the wrists. If you're finding it's too hard on the wrists, bring the weight back a little bit, so we're not bringing too much pressure into the wrists. If you like that sensation, bring the weight forward. Good, one more breath, inhale. And then we slowly make our way down onto the belly, however that works for your body, and take a mini break. Reminding yourself that lying on your belly is a back bend. So we can stay here for as long as you need, or coming up onto the forearms into Sphinx position. With Sphinx, if we're finding it difficult being in this kind of shape, move your elbows forward as opposed to backwards. So they don't want to be back here, because it'll just strain your elbows. And wider will just make your shoulders have to work harder. So elbows underneath shoulders, but the elbows can also be forward in front of the shoulders. Now remember, this is a lovely pose, and you might think, that's enough, I can feel the back, it's plenty. You might want to tuck the tailbone, lengthen the spine so you really feel that spaciousness, put the teeth back in, through the body. And then maybe we're playing with picking up one foot, seeing how this affects the back line of the body, and releasing. And another one. Another one, because we have 12. The other one, I suppose. You might want to stay with that sort of feeling, or we bring both legs in, bending both knees and releasing, or staying here. Perhaps you want that little bit of movement from the feet go side to side. I quite like this, but it can, depending on what's going on in my back, actually be a bit too much. So listening into your body's needs today, and not what you think your body should be doing. Good. Now we'll come back to the center, release the legs if they're extended up. Hands can come underneath the shoulders. We'll lift back up to that tabletop position, and then deciding again whether we're having a wide kneed child pose position or a closed kneed child pose position. What feels better for you this time? Maybe the hands are a pillow for the head. We can breathe here. Couple of breaths. Now by all means stay in child pose, or we're going to have a play with that rabbit position. God knows why it's called rabbit. Maybe you can tell me. Chin's going to tuck into the chest as far as it can come in. So we're kind of on the hairline at the moment with the head on the ground. Interlace the fingers behind the back, and then lift the bum up to roll onto the crown of the head, and then maybe lifting the hands up. Now this is quite a strong stretch of the neck,
So just make sure more of your weight, eating my necklace, is into your legs and not just dumping the weight into your head, especially if you know your neck is vulnerable. In fact, if you know your neck is not vulnerable, this is probably not the pose for you. One more breath. Now releasing the hands, if you're in the rabbit pose, next to the head, or reaching them forward if you're in tabletop and coming into that cow position, inhaling. And we're going to hold the cow. And breathe. Remember, this cow pose doesn't have to be the deepest cow position you've ever done in your life. That sounds really weird. It doesn't have to be the deepest cow you've ever done. Sometimes when I hear myself teaching yoga, I'm just like, wow. Just wow. We sound so silly. And then if you want to move around a little bit, have a bit of movement. And again, it can be small. Small movements govern big ones. Less is more. And if you're thinking, yeah, I'm good, I want to come back to child pose, you can. Or tuck the toes and shift back into downward facing dog. Again, movement is welcome, and there is no perfect positioning for your hands or your feet. You can't do downward facing dog wrong. If you're rounding the spine and you're somewhere here, just notice what the intention is. What are you trying to do with your body? Do you want to lengthen your spine? Maybe bend your knees if that's the case. If you're actually struggling with the wrists and you're finding it really heavy, walk the hands back to the feet more. If you're actually feeling that the legs are just really tight, bend the knees deeper, or you can play coming in and out of this position if it's tiring. We're going to come out of it anyway, so drop the knees down. Left leg's going to lunge forward, and we're going to come into that lovely high or low lunge, crescent lunge, interlace the fingers, and maybe take a few little circles, small circles, round and round. We'll bring the hands down to frame the left foot, tuck the right toe and come into our standing forward fold. Curling all the way back up to a standing position, all the way. And then one final little hula. Hula hula. Maybe just feeling into the spine, just noticing if the back feels, how it feels. Maybe you're like, oh, actually I really want the bounces or the twists or the side to side movements. Just see what you need to offer your body. Good. And then we're going to make our way down into constructive rest pose to relax. Hands, I quite like them placed on the belly. Back of the skull just melts into the ground. I'm feeling the points of contact from the feet, the sacrum, around the middle back and the back of the head, maybe the shoulders, the elbows. And take a few moments here to rest. You can take as long as you might need here. If you find it difficult to relax the legs, you can always straighten them away or bring some support underneath the knees. Or even knocking the knees together if that feels a bit better for your body. So this is where we're going to want to have our rolled up towel or blanket. Here's one I had from earlier. So if you're working with a blanket or a towel, it's completely up to you how thick you roll it. I'm going to roll mine kind of not the thinnest but not the thickest either. So somewhere halfway, and remember we're still working with that kind of less is more feeling. So rolling up to a thickness you think is enough pressure, we're going to come onto, it doesn't matter which hip, I'm now on my left, and we want the towel or pillow, whatever we're using, to sort of sink into the space between
the hip and the rib cage. I just heard the earpod tell me it was low on battery, so I'm just swapping them over. Hang on. Can you still hear me? Yeah? Yeah, okay, cool. Phew. So, the rib cage doesn't want to be pressed into anything. We want to have the pillow or towel in between hip bone and rib. And then we can lie down. If you need another pillow, you're more than welcome to have one. I quite like bringing the knees together, but you can also land the top foot into the floor and slightly roll back to get a bit more into the QL, so the thick ropey muscle at the back of the body. Just find where you're comfortable and you can feel a very gentle pressure into the spine. So you can feel a slight pushing of the vertebrae up towards the sky. That's all you're doing. So it's nothing massive. I kind of want you to get the impression, or actually feel it rather than get the impression, that it's comfortable. And you're like, oh, this is nice. I could be here for a while. Slowing down the breath, if that feels good. Maybe closing down the eyes. Just relaxing into the body. A really gentle pressure about another minute here. Notice what you're feeling, where you're feeling it. Now we're going to roll onto the back. So keeping the towel where it is, it's going into the curvature of your spine. So if you're like, oh, that's too much for my back, reduce the amount that it's rolled up. And I tend to bring the kind of leftover blanket can go down towards the sacral area rather than up towards the thoracic spine. It's just preference though. If you're like, yeah, it doesn't really feel like enough of pressure, you can bring maybe one knee in or maybe both knees in, and you'll increase the pressure into the support. So again, it's what feels most comfortable for your back. You can also bring the arms over the head, which will actually allow the spine to extend a little bit more, giving you a bit more space for that support underneath. So again, it's really how much intensity you're needing today or wanting today, and working with that rather than fighting against it. This gives you the opportunity to breathe into the abdomen, the belly, and by all means, if you want to open up the hips, you can, or straighten the legs away, which will again decrease the sensation in the back of the body, or shift it slightly. So again, we're just exploring what feels the most appropriate for your back. Again, you've got about another minute here. So from this position, we're going to roll to the other side. So we roll onto, for me it's my right side, coming into a really lovely pressure into the spine, just gently pushing it the other way. And relaxing. Just go where it's comfortable. Allow your body to feel like it's able to just give in to the support rather than fighting against it. So if you feel you're pushing against it, it's probably too intense. So it's important that we actually enable the body to kind of ground in and soften rather than that fighting sort of feeling that you can have when you're pushing the self too far. And then as we slowly, this time, we're going to roll onto the belly. So we keep the towel where it is, either coming into Sphinx position or coming all the way down. And you can move the towel to where it feels the most comfortable for you. I say comfortable because this one can be a little bit more intense. And if you don't want to use the towel or the blanket, you can always remove it and place your hands where the towel is, either flat palms or soft fists. We often forget that when we're thinking of the back of the body, the back line of the body, the spine and the center are really correlated. So you might end up getting pain in a part of your back that's actually related to one of your organs. So never underestimate the power and the importance of the internal organ health and flow of energy and blood and lymphatic system, everything. So being sensitive to the fact that your body is complex and it isn't just going to be where the pain or where the irritation is felt in the body or the tension or the lack of flexibility, whatever it might be, may not be that spot that is the, in inverted commas, issue. So we're trying to work with the whole body, so working more holistically. As best we can. Last minute here. Again, if you find that you're pushing too much against the towel, you may need to reduce the amount that the towel is rolled. Or you might find that the intensity either increases as time goes on or it may decrease. These are not wrong or right, it's just what you're experiencing. So check in with your own tolerance levels. We've all got a threshold, and sometimes we need to come away from a posture sooner because it just became too much for the body. And if you're starting to yawn like I am, never be afraid to yawn. It is not a sign of boredom or necessary tiredness.
Often it's a sign that there's a shifting going on in the body or the nervous system or the brain. It's actually, generally speaking, quite a good sign. We just get told off for yawning in our culture. It's very silly. So to come out of this posture, we are going to come back onto the spine. You may, though, want to come into a tabletop position or a seated position, just to allow the belly to fill back up with fresh blood before you come onto the back. So that you're just allowing the belly to pour back in with blood. And it feels, for me, I love this feeling of that kind of tingling of fresh blood coming back in. And then we'll move our towel off to the side. I was like, don't need that anymore. And come back to either constructive rest pose or any pose that feels comfortable to end your practice. So if it's Shavasana, if it is fetal pose, if you want to stay on the belly, I welcome you to choose a pose that feels restful. And stay here for as long as you need, or I will bring you out in a couple of minutes. When the time has come to an end for our session together today. Excuse the big yawn between those few words. So gently beginning to make your way back up to a comfortable seat in any way that feels nourishing for your body. Take your time, there's no rush. And we'll close off our practice together by sweeping the arms up towards the sky, inhaling, the palms connect. And exhale the hands to the heart center, finding gratitude for your practice today. Namaste.